Welcome to this forum for candidates running for Washington's 6th Congressional District. This seat is for the United States Congress. The election is on November 5th. You should receive your mail-in ballot and voter's guides a couple of weeks before the election, which is coming up soon. If you're not yet registered, you can register online at votewa.gov or at election departments or public libraries until 8 p.m. on Election Day. The candidates for Washington's 6th Congressional District are Drew C. McEwen and Emily Randall. Welcome and thank you both for being here. The 6th Congressional District covers the entire Olympic Peninsula, the Kitsap Peninsula, and much of Tacoma. At least part of 6 of Washington's counties, and all of most of those, get to vote for this congressional seat. I am Liz Kernitz-Thurlow, moderating for the League of Women Voters of Tacoma-Pierce County. Terry Baker of the League is our timekeeper. And huge thanks to the candidates for attending. The League of Women Voters of Tacoma-Pierce County wishes to acknowledge that we gather on the ancestral lands of the Coast Salish people, surrounded by their traditional waters in the shadow of Mount Tahoma. We actively seek inclusive and respectful partnerships that honor Indigenous cultures, histories, identities, and current realities. So, the candidates have received ground rules, which include a maximum of 2 minutes for an opening statement, 90 seconds for most answers, 1 minute for closing statements, stopping when time is up, sticking to the issues, being courteous to the other candidate, etc. Do you both agree to them? Good. Both candidates will receive the same questions and have the same amount of time in which to answer them. The order of answering will rotate. We will begin with opening statements of a maximum of 2 minutes, please. And Drew McEwen, you get the first statement.
All right. Well, thank you. And thank you to the League of Women Voters for hosting us tonight. And thank you, Emily, for being here. We get to do this a number of times here recently and in the near future. So we have a unique opportunity here before us with an open seat for Congress. And it's my pleasure and frankly, my honor to be running for this seat. And it's also an opportunity to bring a new voice to Congress. And as we look at the issues before us, I think what's important is to look at the resumes of those of us that are running, and so you can decide what who you feel will be best suited. And I believe I bring a well-rounded resume to this race. I came out here in the early 90s via the Navy, served in the submarine force out of Bangor, Washington, and got out and went into the business world and eventually started my own company, which is still in business today, here 23 years later. And in 2012, I was asked by the folks in my community to run for the State House Representatives and won a seat that hadn't been held by a Republican since 1932. And that was a profound opportunity as well at that time. And a couple of years ago, my predecessor in the Senate departed from legislative service, and I transitioned to the Senate in the 2022 election. And putting those experiences together, I believe, gives me the opportunity to really tackle the issues before us, whether it's the economy and the struggle that working families are facing, doing a better job with our national defense sector. We have a critical base in our district, and we also have a lot of residents that live in this district that also work at JBLM, and those are two vital installations to our national security and to the safety of our country. And then finally, the immigration issues that are before us, we need to take some bold action on. And again, I look at my background and the ability to work across the aisle for the past 12 years and experience in the military and the business world, I believe bring me with a well-rounded resume to represent the people. And I look forward to your questions tonight.
Thank you. Well timed. I remember that both of you are very good at that. Emily Randall, please, your opening statement.
Thank you so much to the League. Dedicated volunteers in support of a better informed democracy, to all of you who are tuning in, and echoing Drew, my thanks to him as well. I think what I have learned from getting to represent this community and growing up on the Kitsap Peninsula is that our neighbors want respectful politicians who are going to work hard to deliver results regardless of party identification. We want folks who are going to serve all of us who, will work as hard for you as you work for your family. And, those are values that I was raised with growing up in Kitsap County in a family of veterans and civil servants, union workers who wanted to build a future that was better for their neighbors. And while I never thought that I was going into politics as a young person, I've been really proud to serve the community where I grew up for these last 6 years in the state Senate. Got involved in politics after Donald Trump won the presidential election in 2016, and I knew I had to do more to defend reproductive freedom, to protect healthcare access, to ensure that we continued to have a Department of Education and that we were expanding opportunities to financial aid instead of going backwards. And here in this election year, I feel that same call to serve, to ensure that first generation college students like me have access to education opportunities, that folks like my brother and my dad who went into the trades have those supportive pathways, to ensure that healthcare is affordable like it was when Medicaid expanded and covered my sister's healthcare. These fights that so many of our neighbors face are personal to me, and I'm really proud to have such a broad a coalition of support for my candidacy.
Thank you. Thank you both. As the order of answering will rotate, Emily Randall will answer the first question first. Unless I specify otherwise, you'll have up to 90 seconds to answer each question. And these are huge questions. We'll move to 2 minutes for at least some. Audience, if you wish to submit a question, please text it to 425-765-5388, which is the little number appearing on the screen below my name. So you have it. So, questions. Whatever happens nationally, it might be a very divided Congress. Derek Kilmer worked to try to bring different viewpoints and parties together. Do you see yourself helping bridge some of the party chasms, and how? Emily Randall.
Yeah.
90 seconds.
So thank you. As someone who for the last 6 years has represented a district that's truly 50% Republican and 50% Democrat, I flipped a state Senate seat by 102 votes and have served alongside 2 Republican members of the House for the last 6 years. I, knock doors every election cycle of voters who are Republicans and Democrats. My town halls are full of, mixed party voters. And as someone who grew up in a bipartisan household, it comes really naturally to me to listen to and respect the opinions of folks who I might not agree with. And that work to see and hear and respect each other, translates into my work in the legislature too. As a whole, the legislature's passed 95% of our bills with bipartisan support, even though we have strong Democratic majorities. I've passed a large majority of my policies as a prime sponsor with bipartisan support. And beyond just the numbers, I have really valued the relationships that I have built with colleagues of both parties from all corners of the state. My ranking member on the Higher Education and Workforce Development Committee I chair, Jeff Holey, is one of my closest colleagues in the legislature. And I look forward to building those relationships with colleagues across the country too, because when we understand how policies impact folks from other corners of our country, it makes our policies better.
Thank you. Drew McEwen.
Thank you. Yeah, so for 12 years, I've been in the state legislature. I've been in the minority the entire time, which means 100% of what I do has to be bipartisan, just by nature of that makeup. I have to work with an administration I don't often agree with, but I find a way to do that, and that's first and foremost developing a friendship and relationship, and looking where you have the common ground, and that's going to be vitally important when you look at going to the national level. You look, the Congress is going to be divided very narrowly. It's highly unlikely that either party will have a significant majority, whoever ends up controlling the U.S. House, and the same in the Senate for that matter. Going to be faced with an administration, from my point of view, that regardless of who wins, it's going to be a contentious administration in either way, and you have to be able to work with either party. And I've shown that I can do that. And again, I believe that there's oftentimes more things that do unite us, and when you put your constituency first, you're going to find the common ground with others, regardless of their party affiliation or in what chamber they're serving in or where they're from. And because there are many common grounds across our nation and across our state here, for that matter, too. And again, it's about a track record. And I've done that at the state level from when I was first elected in 2012 and serving on an aerospace task force to help resolve some issues there to passing bipartisan legislation that I've had to do throughout my career. And again, it always comes to putting your constituency first. And we're looking for that common ground with folks on all sides of the aisles.
Thank you very much. So because there's two of you, if you've answered second, you will always answer first the next time. Just a reminder. You can have 2.5 minutes on this one, and don't use it all if you don't need it. Immigration, especially at the southern border, is huge, controversial, and complicated. What are your thoughts on helping to control it, cracking down, helping people join relatives already here, dividing families, trying to get workers where we need them? Please take about 2.5 minutes and give us some of your thoughts and hopefully very good ideas.
Boy, I wish we could solve this in 2.5 minutes. It is a big issue and it affects all of us. The unsecured border that we have, and it's not just the southern border, it's our marine ports of entry, it's our northern border. We do not have the resources to effectively guard our nation's entry points. And because of that, we've seen a dramatic increase in folks coming across the border that are not from our friendliest neighbors, Iran, China, Yemen. Those percentages have been going up over the past few months, and that raises a number of red flags. We can also look at the fentanyl crisis that has gripped this nation. We lose more Americans every month than we did in 9/11. That is horrendous. And to me, this issue is about the security of this nation, and it's also about growing this nation. I fully support immigration. We need to have a system in place that allows for an expedited processing for those that are seeking asylum so that they're not left in limbo. We need to have a system in place that allows for a properly vetted process for people that want to come here to start a new life, to be part of this nation. This isn't, when I talk about securing the border, it's not about shutting out the Latin America family that's trying to get here to make their life better. I'm all for that. And we need to ensure that we have a process in place to do that. But we have right now a system that is not working. We need more resources at our border to secure it, to make sure that those that are coming in are coming in legitimately. We need to reform our asylum law that has created a number of holes in the system. I realize it's not always practical for somebody to claim that political asylum before they get here, but it should be at the first possible opportunity. And right now, the majority of that takes place in our country, and that creates problems. And finally, we have to have a visa system for those that just want to come here and work, whether it's our agricultural industry, our tech industry, name an industry. We need more workers, and that is what's built this nation. And we have got to continue to grow that, and that's what's made this great melting pot to be a wonderful nation. And let's have the system in place to allow for that process to happen, and make sure that those that wish us harm are not getting into this country. And that's going to take a large bipartisan effort and working with whoever's in the administration to get that done.
Thank you. Emily Randall, please.
Thank you. Yeah, I think what you're seeing in this question is a place where, Drew and I have a lot of common opinions. We both believe that we need to have a secure border, a well-funded and system of processing, system of border security. I would have proudly supported the bipartisan border bill that Trump and the extremist flank of the Republican Party killed for political gain. I think we should have more common sense bipartisan policy that ensures that we're getting funding for essential government programs to the places that they need it, so that we are not continuing to see the trafficking of guns and drugs and human beings across the southern border or in our ports of entry. But I think also really important is that we are not continuing to, vilify and scapegoat immigrants who, are seeking opportunity in this country. I'm not saying that, my colleague, Senator McEwen, is doing that at all, but we're seeing that rhetoric nationally. We're seeing, um, folks from the Republican side of the aisle, from those extremist flanks of the Republican Party, use immigrants as a tool to win elections. And I'm worried about the impacts on families who have worked so hard to provide opportunity for their kids. I'm worried about the impacts on our communities when we are driving out folks who are um, essential to our workforce, to our agricultural workforce, to our tech workforce, to our education system, to our healthcare system. There are so many people who just want to create a better future for their children, just like so many of our families strove to create a better future for their children. And so even as we work to pass policies, bipartisan policies, hopefully, that invest in border security, I think it's really important that we see the humanity in all of our neighbors and don't use them as a pawn.
Thank you. So we're going to go back to 90 seconds, and it's not a smaller issue. It was just, let's try it. Climate change, heat, floods, wildfires, global warming. Are there ways we can help control it? How might you be involved? And the next question is going to deal with currently affected populations, so you can deal with the bigger part. Emily Randall.
Well, it sounds like we're going to touch on hurricanes and extreme weather maybe in a future question. So I will just say that those are examples of unchecked climate change and our inability to so far reduce our carbon emissions in a way that will protect our future. In Washington State, we have been leaders in climate policy that will protect future generations, but we know that we can't do it alone. Our cap and invest program that is incentivizing the reduction of carbon emissions from our biggest polluters and allowing us to reinvest in climate resiliency is an important piece of policy that I hope voters will protect at the ballot this year. But it also cannot solve the global problems. And we need to see strong leadership at the federal level to ensure that we are reducing those emissions in our transportation sector, in our manufacturing sector, in maritime industry, in our, all sectors of our communities. And we don't have to pit good jobs against a clean planet and a green future. We know that investing in green energy solutions and green technology is good for the economy too. So I'm really excited to continue that work.
Thank you. Drew McEwen.
Got the mute there. Yeah, I believe there's a number of things we can do at the federal level that haven't been done. And let's address those. One, we need to stop most favored trade status with the largest polluters in the world. And if we're truly going to put the environment first, then let's do that with our trade practices, and we don't as a nation right now. So I'd look at that as probably one of the biggest things that's before us that we can do. We need to incentivize and not penalize as much, and that's what's happening in Washington State. And that's why you're seeing working families suffer so much. As it's been a heavy-handed approach that does not work for working families. And when you combine the inflationary pressures, we have to allow for new technologies to come on board, and I am all for that. And let's let those develop. Let's let them take hold, because what we think might be the best solution today could turn out to not be tomorrow. So whether, and again, I'd also illustrate that there's no perfect form of energy, right? Solar has 19 toxin chemicals that go into the production of them. They're here in the ground forever. There's no half-life to them. Wind turbines, it takes more carbon pollution to decommission them than what they saved over their lifetime. Does that mean we shouldn't use them? No, it's not at all what I'm suggesting. What I'm suggesting is let's let technologies take hold, but at the same time, not be cutting off what's working for us. And I hope we come back to this a little bit more with the ability to answer this a little more in depth. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and you are first. Karen. Currently, there are many unhoused people as a result of flooding from Hurricane Helene, and now Milton has made landfall. So what do you think congressional responsibilities are to help them, and what will you propose or try to do?
Yeah, my heartfelt prayers to those that are suffering through these natural disasters right now. I've got friends and family that are being affected by both of those storms, and that is so that touches home. And my favorite aunt lives in Florida, and is buckled down tonight for what will be a rough night. Um, and I think it's very unfortunate and frankly disgusting. And I blame both parties. And it doesn't, because it happens regardless of who's in the administration when any of these in a given storm happens. That as of over the past 10, 15 years, um, natural disaster responses have gotten politicized, and they shouldn't. When our people are hurting, are suffering, the last thing that should be talking about is the politicization of it. If you want to debrief something after the fact and figure out what went wrong, what went right, absolutely, there's a time and a place to do that. But we need to ensure that FEMA has got the funding it needs to react when it needs to react, because these are unpredictable and things happen when Congress isn't in session, as we're seeing right now. And that we have to have in place a process. There was a proposal that I saw today, not from a politician, but from the business community, that talked about creating basically FEMA bonds. And we don't have enough time to go in depth on it, but it would allow people to invest in these that would be immediately redeemable by FEMA, to take care of natural disasters when they happen. Let's think outside the box and do more to ensure that we can help
Thank you.
those that are in need when they need it. Thanks.
Emily Randall, please.
Thank you. I also, have been watching my friends and family impacted by, the hurricane and extreme weather, folks who have been impacted by extreme heat. We are seeing more and more extreme weather crises. And, it just really brings home the importance of investing in climate solutions and in climate resiliency for folks who are only going to continue to be a target. Also, the importance of, continuing to, um, have a strong flood insurance program so that folks who are impacted by rising sea level and extreme flooding will have, help and solutions, from the insurance that they have depended on. Um, but we also, I agree with Senator McEwen, need to, um, not use disasters like this as a political tool to divide our communities and to sow mistrust in government. FEMA is doing its job, right? Getting funding out to people who need it, getting programs in place, ensuring that, folks who are impacted by disaster have the resources that they need. And, the attempts by some politicians to sow mistrust and to make people think that the government has left them behind is really scary. But even more so underscores for me the essential work that we have to do to combat climate change.
Thank you. We have gotten a question from a listener, and I'm only going to give you a minute for it because it's really about the state, although I hope you can connect it nationally. Mason and Grays Harbor counties have a couple of the highest employment rates in Washington state. What would you do to help economic development in these rural counties, which make up a large part of this district? So 1 minute, please, Emily Randall.
And you mean highest unemployment rates in the state, right?
I think that's what I said.
Okay.
Oh,
Oh, okay.
what I said. Certainly what I meant to say. Yes.
Yeah. I will say that, economic development in rural areas is one of the reasons that, I was motivated to get into politics and that I'm motivated to, continue on at the federal level. As a young person who grew up in South Kitsap, I went to preschool in Mason County. I grew up on the line between Mason and Kitsap. I remember what it was like to think that I didn't have, a pathway to opportunity when I graduated high school. And as Congressman Kilmer said over and over, we shouldn't be, a state that has our highest export of young people. We need to be ensuring that folks have pathways to opportunity. And as chair of the Higher Education and Workforce Development Committee, for 5 years in the Senate, I think one of the things that we can and should focus on is using our community and technical colleges, Olympic College in Shelton, Grays Harbor College, Peninsula College, as engines of economic development to partner with small businesses, to invest in the green economy, to ensure that students can get the skills that they need to thrive.
Thank you. Drew McEwen?
Thank you. Yeah, infrastructure investments are huge, and I'm proud over the last 12 years, along with my seatmates, that we've brought back over $1 billion into this district through various budgets. And that's a big part of it, is making sure that you have the infrastructure there, and also the to lead forward and get new technologies brought in. I look at Grays Harbor, and we have the opportunity there via the Navy to do some of our drone programs. The ability is there. That would be a huge uptick for Grays Harbor. And we've also got to stop vilifying the industries that are there. The timber industry continues to take political whacks left and right, and yet we scream about the cost of housing, but we drive timber and mills out of business routinely. And that kind of activity needs to stop. Those are high-paying jobs that are vital to our economy and to our housing supply. So, a couple of things there. Again, looking at infrastructure investments. New programs that are coming on board, such as the drone program with the Navy. That'd be a great spot for Grays Harbor, and with the political whack-a-mole with our industries that are thriving in or trying to thrive in a rural area.
Thank you. Okay, back to 90 seconds. In 2022, Congress passed the Inflation Reduction Act, our largest climate-related legislation. If elected, would you support maintaining this? Why or why not? And do you have other climate-related plans? Drew McEwen.
Yep. I find the irony in that name, that Inflation Reduction Act, because when you're spending more money at the federal level, or at the state level for that matter, you're putting more you're driving the demand further, which increases prices. So that makes it a little difficult to tame down inflation. But there's components in there that are certainly worth keeping and worth looking at. I'd also suggest, though, that when we talk about things like this is part of the problem we have as a nation right now, is that we don't have a balanced approach to how we budget, because we don't budget. And we pass piecemeal work and then turn around and do continuous resolutions, which are band-aids to the budgetary process. We need to look at the entire picture holistically to ensure that we've got a process going forward that we can start driving down our deficit spending and our national debt. Because if we don't do that, we're going to continue to have interest rates that make things unaffordable for working families. So that is part of the overall equation. And when it comes back, though, to the climate change issue, again, let's incentivize new technologies, and get out of the way and let them grow, let them expand, and let's see what's going to work. And a big part of this too is the transmission capability. As a nation and as a state, we are woefully behind. If we could magically generate all the power we need today, we don't have the ability to transmit it. And that's something where the federal government needs to be leading on more, because it crosses state lines. And I think that's a component that was overlooked through that. So there's a number of issues involved in this, but again, I put it in the context of an overall budget process, and that's where we need to really be looking at also with our policy making.
Thank you. Emily Randall.
I have to say, I think the Inflation Reduction Act was some of the most powerful policy to help working families that we have seen in a very long time from the federal level. Starting with incentives for green technology and green energy solutions for individuals, but also tax incentives at the manufacturing level to help spur our economic growth in the green technology sector. These incentives have helped create jobs and reduced supply chain disruptions, and we definitely should be continuing policy like that makes a difference in our economy and the lives of people. There have also been additional individual benefits from the Inflation Reduction Act. Really personally for me, some of the healthcare cost reductions, from drug pricing to subsidies, for Affordable Care Act plans on the exchange. We have a healthcare system that is covering more and more people, but that continues to have challenges, and creating these subsidy programs for folks who are buying their insurance on their own without an employer providing that plan, uh, the subsidies are some of the only ways that folks can afford healthcare access, and that makes a big difference. I'll also say, there's additional supports for low and middle income families, the child tax credits that we should continue, and these programs change lives.
Thank you. Okay, Emily Randall, do you see a way to incentivize more affordable housing at the federal level? How and will you try to?
Yeah, a lot of the work to create additional housing supply happens at the state level, and we have been dedicated over these past many years to, um, to create more opportunities to fund low and middle income housing, to, increase the requirements, to get tax incentives um, for affordable rental units. We also have been looking at ways that we can cut some of the, red tape and restrictions, whether that's through county zoning changes or, um, a simpler permitting process.
So should it
And
stay at the state level?
no, I'm not there yet. No. So I think we've been making progress at the state level. There is more that we can do at the federal level. And I think some of it looks like tax incentives. Some of it looks like creating, a financial incentive or creating access to capital for folks to build and develop, whether that's um, conversions of, business, um, buildings into homes, expanding the affordable home ownership programs, looking at ways that folks can take personal tax deductions for rent, and expanding, opportunities for individual people. But it really is going to take a partnership.
Thank you. Drew McEwen.
Yeah, so federally, one of the biggest things we need to do is increase the federal funding for flood insurance. That has a profound impact on the housing market in a number of states, basically in all states, frankly. And then we've got to ensure that we renew and frankly expand the opportunity zone credits. That has been a huge boost to low income areas, and that was passed in 2018. It's only got a couple of years left before it expires, and that would be catastrophic because it has had a profound impact on the ability to develop and add housing, add business infrastructure to low income areas. Those are two huge parts of it, and then the other part of this, again, it comes back to the federal budget and our lack of ability to pass a budget, and the amount of debt that we have right now as a nation, and the interest we're paying on that has created instability in the interest rate market. And when you have higher interest rates, that makes housing less affordable. So if we can get our federal fiscal house in order, that will go a long way in driving down interest rates, or at least maintaining a more stable interest rate market. And that has a huge impact, as we saw previously before we had these higher interest rates on the ability of people to afford a home. And we saw what happened over the past year and a half with the Federal Reserve raising rates. It stalled the housing market on a nationwide basis and made it less affordable for most working families.
Thank you. I would love to get through 6 more questions, and we don't have time to. So you do not have to use all 90 seconds in your answers. That's all I'm going to say. Drew McEwen, you're first. Bodily autonomy. What reproductive decisions should be made by a woman and not be made by the federal or state government? The Supreme Court recently moved some things to the states. Or should things like reproductive rights be controlled by the government at all? Go.
Yep, a very sensitive issue for women that view it on both sides of that issue, and I respect that, and I think we need to recognize that we're not likely to change people's opinions one way or the other, regardless of which side somebody is on. And so I look at what the will of the voters of Washington State have said, and that's been established for decades now, and the voters of this state have made it quite clear where they view reproductive rights. The Dobbs decision did return this to the states. And so with that in mind, I don't see Washington State changing anything anytime soon. And I would not support a national ban. And what I would support is legislation at the federal level that ensures that reproductive rights are there for rape, incest, and the life of the mother. Those are crucial, and those protections need to be there.
Thank you. Emily Randall.
Thank you. I don't think it'll come as a surprise to anyone who knows anything about my record that I believe that it is not the government's position to get in the way of, a pregnant person and their doctor as they seek to make decisions about their families and their futures. I worked at Planned Parenthood before running for office, and I have been a leader in Washington State's policy to protect and strengthen access to abortion, to ensure that neither patients nor providers are persecuted or prosecuted by other, anti-abortion states. When folks are forced to come here to access healthcare. Yes, I believe the voters of Washington have, made their voices heard time and time again at the ballot, that they believe in access to abortion. Also, 63% of Americans support access to legal abortion in all or most cases. 70% of Americans are opposed to national abortion bans. I think it is incumbent upon us as hopeful congressional leaders to work to reinstate the protections of Roe and to continue to ensure that it's not just the wealthiest folks who can afford to travel from one state to the other who can access healthcare that is their right.
Thank you. Okay, Emily Randall, you're first. Budget. Continuing resolutions. How can we get Congress to pass a budget? And here's the other important part. What needs to be in it? Where should we be spending more or less money? And what do we need to fund? And what do we need not to fund? And yeah, I know that could take
in 90 seconds.
Oh, yes, in less than 90 seconds.
Right. Yeah. So, my dad worked at the Puget Sound Naval Shipyard when I was a kid. And I remember, government shutdown in the 90s when he was furloughed and what that meant for our family. So many of our constituents, not just those who work for PSNS, Forest Service and, folks who work in the Social Security office, so many people, including those who receive services, are impacted by government shutdowns. And we need to ensure that, we are not continuing to fund essential government programs just by continuing resolution after continuing resolution, to be on the rocks, every, so many months to try and figure out whether or not we can keep the lights on. The American people deserve better. And I'm really proud to have served in leadership in this Washington state where we have passed budgets on time and balanced for more than 5 years in a row. That's a record that the state hasn't met since the 1800s. And Washington state has achieved, a AAA bond rating, the healthiest bond rating we can get, because we, as Democratic leaders in Washington state, have made smart budget decisions. I also want to mention that when we talk about cuts in spending, it's real people that we're talking about, real programs that impact people. And when we were faced by a challenging budget situation during COVID, we decided not to make huge cuts to social safety net programs because it was real people's lives that hung in the balance, and we're better off for it.
Thank you. Drew McEwen.
Yeah, thank you. I think that, and I spoke a little bit about this in some of the previous, and there's my dogs saying hi. My apologies.
And here.
I spoke on this in some of my previous answers that continuous resolutions do not work. And the last time we passed the federal budget was when Newt Gingrich was Speaker of the House and Bill Clinton was president. And political polar opposites, but it shows that we can do it. And we've got to get back to that. And I think when you look at solutions at the federal level, look at things that have worked in the states. And it doesn't matter whether Republican or Democrat. Bill Clinton spearheaded welfare reform that was the brainchild of Governor Tommy Thompson, a Republican governor in Wisconsin. And I bring that up as an example because let's look at what we do in Washington State. This doesn't mean I agree with all of our budgets, but I agree with our process. Okay. And we have to do one. We have to do it on time. Our Constitution and the state level demands it. But we also have a 2-year cycle and a 4-year outlook that has the balance. And if we move at the federal level to having a 2-year cycle and also at the same time move towards a balanced budget, we're not going to magically balance it overnight. I realize that, but we need to have a time frame in mind that we can head towards a balanced budget. And there are times when you have to go into debt. I recognize that just as something happens in your home, oftentimes you've got to take out a loan to repair that. Those things can happen at the government level as well. But let's go to a 2-year cycle. Let's have a balanced budget in time that we're going to get to, and we can begin to have that process. But it's going to take people willing to work together and having the leadership to do that.
Thank you. Okay, Chair McEwen again. Having talked about reproductive rights and now budget, what kind of healthcare system would you like the US to have? Medicare for all, private pay, leaving uninsured people uninsured? What is your vision of government responsibilities toward its citizens? And how can we accomplish whatever it is you envision? Quickly.
The irony of that. There's a number of things that need to happen, and the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, whichever phrase you prefer, was designed to be able to not have anybody be uninsured. Well, it turns out that doesn't work because young, healthy people chose not to be on in the market for that because it was too costly, and that drove up the prices for other demographics that drastically needed it. I think and I'm not suggesting that we go and scrap the whole thing, but it needs to be reformed so that it can work better. And we need to get back to where people can select more of an a la carte plan that works for their family instead of having the mandates that you must have this coverage, that coverage, etc. And I think when people are given choices, they're going to do what makes sense for their family financially and not the government telling them what needs to happen. And that when you do that and you have a broader base, you're going to lower those insurance rates. We also need to allow for insurance to be bought across state lines. And also through our trade policy, we need to ensure that American taxpayers are not subsidizing the pharmaceutical industry for foreign countries that offer those same medications significantly lower. That's a system that needs to change as well. And we also need to have price transparency. Ask anybody today, what does a knee replacement cost, or pick your procedure. People don't know. And that creates problems on their own. And I'm out of time, but a huge issue that's going to take a lot of work to get done.
Thank you. Emily Randall.
Thank you. So, I came into the legislature wanting to work on expanding healthcare access. I had seen what Medicaid expansion in 1993 did to my family to ensure that my sister with complex disabilities had access to healthcare when she needed it, surgeries and equipment and expensive treatment, and that made a huge difference for us. And there are so many families in Washington and across the country who still can't rely on that kind of healthcare access, the safety net that they deserve. The ACA made a huge impact on so many people, folks who were denied plans because of pre-existing conditions like pregnancy, for one, folks who were unable to afford healthcare. It was originally designed with a public option, like we have now instated in Washington, but wasn't able to pass in the best version of, sorry, someone's knocking at our office door, that wasn't able to pass the way that it was originally designed. Washington State, we have passed policy to create a pathway to universal health care, to create a commission that is continuously expanding coverage. And there are some things that I'd like us to do at the federal level, not least of which is maintaining the ACA subsidies, but also allowing states like Washington to use our federal Medicaid match dollars to cover more people so that there's less that the state is taking on its own.
Thank you. We have people shooting at presidential candidates, and we have elementary school students who practice active shooter drills. We had atomic bomb drills when I was in early elementary school, but they were at least about something abstract and far away. School shooters are not far away, unfortunately. What can and should we do about this? Emily Randall.
I was in school. I was a student when the Columbine shooting took place. And so, I grew up in public schools with active shooter drills. And that's been a long time ago. And we haven't seen the kind of change at the federal level that students and educators, parents and grandparents have been clamoring for. I will say that we have done a lot in this Washington to make our classrooms and our communities and our neighbors safer. We have passed policy to increase red flag laws and to ensure that folks who, are going through background checks have dangerous, backgrounds caught, folks who were domestic abusers. Um, we also have passed another law that allows people to add themselves to a red flag list. Folks who, are having suicidal ideations and who worry that they might go out and buy a gun. We have created a system where people can give up their rights to have a firearm. We've banned some dangerous weapons, and so many of the school shootings that we've seen around the country would be much more difficult in Washington because of some of the laws that we passed in the legislature and at the ballot box. But without, stronger national background checks, without stronger red flag laws nationally, we will not have the safety that our communities deserve.
Thank you. Drew McEwen.
Yeah, unfortunately, we've got a societal problem that we're not going to solve overnight, and that problem has a number of root causes. And I believe one of the big ones is this move towards personal responsibility, or move away from personal responsibility. For instance, the state legislature in this last session, there was a bill introduced to decriminalize drive-by shootings. What message does that send? And when we continuously decriminalize things, we invite criminal behavior. And so we've got to start being serious about things like that. And we have to enforce laws that are on the book. But let's answer this question directly. And what can we do at the federal level? Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to solve the violence issue overnight. And so in the meantime, I support having grants to help schools be retrofitted, or new construction that's done that has enhanced safety measures. That's first and foremost that needs to happen. Secondly, let's increase funding for our NICS system, our background check system, so that those are done more accurately and more quickly. And third, there is a lack of prosecution of those that try to buy a firearm that aren't legally allowed to. And when those flags come up, very rarely is a prosecution done, and that needs to happen. That'll send a strong message as well. So I've offered those as three proposals out of the gate to address this issue.
Thank you. Okay, stay where you are. You're going to get 1 minute, and this is a question that just came in. What are your top priorities for national security? Since this district has a large military presence, do you see any impacts in response to national security policies? If you can deal with that in 1 minute, please do. Drew McEwen.
Yeah, we need to right size our federal defense spending, get rid of wasteful programs that don't meet the mission, and we can go through a litany of those. But by ending those programs and reinvesting the dollars in programs that are working, that are meeting our mission, ensuring our personnel have the training, the equipment that they need, making sure our shipyard has the infrastructure it needs to meet its mission, is crucial. We're the fifth most trade dependent state in the nation. That requires the presence of a strong Navy for freedom of the seas. And we also need to ensure our other branches have the resources they need. Yes, we live in a dangerous time. I'm proud to have the endorsement of our retired commanding officers and flag officers from various branches, and working hand in hand with them to address the national security issues, whether it's European instability, the war in the Middle East, North Korea wanting to hit us with an ICBM, the China threat to the Taiwan Strait. These are all large and looming, and we need to have a strong national defense in order to preserve our peace.
Thank you. Emily Randall.
One of the things that I don't think we often talk about when we talk about strong national defense is policy that I've spent a lot of time talking about with our DoD liaisons here in Washington State, which is the family support services that lead to troop readiness. The lack of affordable childcare and the lack of affordable housing in communities like Kitsap are detriments to troop readiness for our armed services. The infrastructure challenges that keep folks from getting to a naval base in cases of accidents on Highway 3 or 16, those are detriments to our troop readiness. And the issues of access to education waivers are things that keep people from enlisting in the armed services. And so I've been really dedicated to working hard alongside military families and the Department of Defense liaisons in my time in the legislature to work on issues of childcare, to work on issues of education, to expand affordable housing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, this will be the last question. Emily Randall will answer it first. You will serve in the U.S. Congress, but represent this portion of Washington state, which has a large Native American population, a lot of our states and country's coastline, and many military families in various military services. How will this affect your work? What, if any, special interests will you have and work for to benefit the residents of this district? And I'm throwing in, because it came from someone, will you continue Derek Kilmer's work to mitigate climate change issues on our reservation?
Oh, yeah. Like 7 questions.
Exactly.
You
And
know,
a half.
the 6th district is one of the most beautiful places in the country. And that the diversity of the military installations, of 12 federally recognized tribes, of coastline, of 6 counties, of forest land, like that is what makes it rich and beautiful. And, as someone who grew up here in the house my mom grew up in, who has family who have both run ships out of Westport, and have had a cabin on Lake Quinault, and who have worked in these communities, I feel so lucky to have learned from neighbors and leaders across the 6th district throughout my life. And I think the job of a member of Congress representing this district is to be committed to continuing to learn from our neighbors, from tribal councils and tribal chair people, from folks who are on the front lines of education and childcare, folks who are enlisted, and veterans who are separated from service. There are lessons that I can learn from every single one of my constituents, and I am committed, just as Derek was before, to going out, to listening, to meeting people where they are, and to bringing their stories with me into policymaking.
Thank you. Drew McEwen.
Yeah, we do have a beautiful district, and what comes first are the people of this district. And hearing those voices, representing them, and taking their cause to the halls of Congress. Um, we're not going to magically all agree on everything all the time, but you've got to take all aspects into account. You also have to be willing to buck your party. And I've done that a number of times in the 12 years I've been in the legislature. I don't just vote a party line vote. And I think if you look at my vote record, you'll see that. And that's a result of putting the constituency first. And I will continue to do that. And again, I'm proud of the relationships I've developed with, whether it's business and labor, tribal nations throughout my legislative district, and to working families and those that are struggling and those that are doing well. You have to understand where people are coming from in life, and how together we can put our best foot forward and do the best for this district and subsequently the state and the nation. And that comes through effectively listening. And I'm doing town halls right now, and just had one last week up in Port Angeles. And that is key too, to getting out and listening to people and not have a pre-scripted thing that of how it's going to go, and just taking the questions right off the cuff. Looking forward to continue to do that through the rest of this campaign, and really hearing from people firsthand what is on their mind.
Thank you. Thank you both so much. Now we move to closing statements. You each have 1 minute, and this will be in reverse order from opening statements so that Emily Randall will begin.
All right. Thank you so much for the time tonight and for the thoughtful questions. I'm excited at the opportunity to serve this community, and I hope that the voters of the 6th district will once again select me as their first place choice, like they did in the primary. My coalition is broad, and I think it reflects my experience as someone who was born and raised in this district, but also someone who has worked to deliver real results on healthcare affordability and education access, climate change and transportation, economic opportunity for my neighbors. I'm proud to have earned the endorsement of the Tacoma News Tribune in the primary, and just yesterday to have earned the endorsement of the Seattle Times editorial board. I'm proud to have Senator Patty Murray and Speaker Lori Jenkins and Representative Tawana Nobles and Councilmember Ryan Mello and Nick Brown on my team, but I'm also so proud to have the support of retired educators and neighbors and community members. And I hope that you will choose me to be your next member of Congress.
Thank you. I can no longer see you. Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can.
Good.
Yes.
Drew McEwen, your closing statement, please.
Thank you, and thanks for having us here tonight. Always a pleasure to have these opportunities to answer the questions that are on voters' minds. Folks, I'm asking for your vote tonight. You'll be receiving your ballot soon. I know Mason County's hit today in the mailboxes, so it's upon us. And so are the choices before us, as not only as a district but this state and this nation. And I offer my service to you, my experience in the Navy, time running a business, and in the state legislature, and that has created for me a resume that fits well for this district. And I've represented a large portion of this congressional district from my state legislative district for the past 12 years, and I'm familiar with the issues that face us. And as I said before, we're not always going to agree, but we're going to listen. We're going to come together and find the solutions and work on those that we can get done. I don't believe that our best days are behind us; they're ahead of us, and I'm committed to bringing the temperature down and the politicization that's going on in this nation, and doing the very best I can for the constituency of the 6th District. And I ask for your vote. And thanks for having us tonight.
Thank you. Thank you to the candidates for being here and answering our questions. Thank you to all who watch and become educated voters. Thank you to the members of the League Voter Service Committee who organize, record, and allow access to these forums. The general election is on November 5th. You should receive your ballots and voters' pamphlets shortly. If you do not receive your ballot, check with your local election department. If you're not yet a registered voter, you may register at votewa.gov, at your election department, or at public libraries. Information about candidates is in your voters' pamphlets and at vote411.org, as well as on candidates' websites. The candidates for Congressional District 6 are Emily Randall and Drew C. McEwen. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, I wish to thank the candidates, Terry Baker, the timekeeper, and our wonderful Zoom organizers for recording and distributing this forum. Election Day is Tuesday, November 5th. Don't forget to vote. Thank you.